Okay, that's good. My name's Tanya Finchum. I'm here today with Wanda Peltier, and we're in the Southern Oaks Public Library in Oklahoma City. And today is May the 16th, 2007. And this is part of the Oklahoma State Library's project called Oklahoma Women of the Legislature. I think I said that wrong. It's Women of the Oklahoma Legislature, past and present. So welcome today, and thank you for talking with us.
My pleasure.
Okay, my first question is just tell me, where you were born and just a little bit about your childhood, and then we'll move forward.
Well, I was born in Chakota, Oklahoma. I'm a lifelong Oklahoman in 1933 during the Depression, and I've heard all about the hard times, and it affects my life until this day.
Okay. Well, how early did you get interested in politics?
Well, it was in the 1970s when my husband and I lived on a farm near Macomb, Oklahoma. And that's when I learned from the League of Women Voters that there were some laws on the books that seriously affected women in my situation. That is, women working with their husbands in small businesses or in farming operations. And they told me that the laws were one that said the husband is the head of the family and he can choose the place and the mode of residence, and the wife will conform. And the second one was that Oklahoma is a separate property state as opposed to a community property state. In a community property state, the wife has the legal right to half of the property acquired during the marriage. But in a separate property state, the property belongs to the person who earned the money to buy it. Mm-hmm. And since the husband was the head of the household, that's the automatic assumption that the husband owns the property. So I got to thinking, well, if I died first, this property would belong to my husband free and clear with no questions asked. And if he died first, I would have to prove money or money's worth to own my very own property. Mm-hmm. So that's when we got a will. And it's a good thing we did, because a few years later, he died of cancer. And I would have been in a real mess without that will because of the laws on the Oklahoma books. And about that time, the Equal Rights Amendment was beginning to come before the Oklahoma Legislature. Mm-hmm. And I thought, now that's what we need. So I went with a group of women over to the Capitol to speak and to lobby for the Equal Rights Amendment. And we were so naive. We thought if we looked good, if we smelled good, if we made sense, it was a done deal. Well, about all we got at first were pats on the head. That is, until we organized. But that's another story.
Well, you might as well go ahead and delve into that if you want to while we're on it. Or do you want to wait a little?
Well, no, that's fine. We built the Oklahoma Women's Political Caucus, which is a branch of the National Women's Political Caucus, which is bipartisan, by the way, and mostly made up of women, but men were most welcome. During the struggle for the Equal Rights Amendment, we built the Oklahoma Women's Political Caucus to be the third largest in the nation, based on population. And we had more than 800 members statewide. And I was the chair from 1980 to 1984. Our goals, of course, were ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, first and foremost, and also to elect women and men to office who supported the Equal Rights Amendment and were pro-choice as well. And, we did a pretty good job. In 1982, we raised $16,000, and we invested 5,000 hours in campaign. campaigns. In 1984, we raised $23,000 and spent 10,000 hours campaigning. And we ended up with 13 women in the legislature in 1985. And that's up from 6 women 10 years earlier in 1975. And of course, we helped men along the way too. But the best part was we got first-rate training and know-how from the National Women's Political Caucus. Wow. I remember one year I got to go a day early for a national conference for a workshop, a political workshop. And it featured the foremost political consultants of the day, Bob Shrum, the Democrat, and John Deerdorf, the Republican. The workshop was fabulous.
A great background to run your own campaign later, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, when you got back, did you initiate anything that you had learned there?
No. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. In campaigns, in individual campaigns, we worked in lots of campaigns. And I've worked in campaigns for 20 years, many campaigns, more than 20 years, actually.
Well, tell me about your first one.
Well, it started at the breakfast table. After I had spent the entire night getting a campaign mailing ready for a candidate. We didn't have all the automation back then. And my dear sweet husband of 2 years said, "Sweet baby, if you're going to spend your life in everybody else's campaign, you might as well run yourself." Scary, but interesting. So I'm a researcher by profession, among other things. And so I did the research. I found a district where I thought I could win, took my portable computer down to the Oklahoma County Election Board and typed in everything I could find about the voters. Then I printed me out some 4x6 cards and started knocking on doors. That was way back when you had to register to vote through a voter's registrar. So I would knock and I'd say, "Hello, I know that John and Mary are registered to vote here, but does anybody else in your family need to register to vote?" And along the way, I registered about 500 people, but I cleaned up my mailing list too. Mm-hmm. But when I finished at each house, I would say, "Thank you for your time. I would love for you to have a copy of my favorite recipe." And up at the top, it was on, the recipe was on a little yellow 4x6 card with the heading, "Wanda Joe's Hot Hominy." So I was getting name identification along the way. But it was a splendid recipe, and I got requests for it for years to come. And so I decided, after talking it over with my husband, that there was a compatibility there. The district is made up of older people primarily, and many of them were little old ladies who were living alone, and they just reminded me of my dear sweet Aunt Myrtle, you know. So it was almost like family. And so that's when we moved. My husband owned his house when we got married 2 years prior. He sold his house in northwest Oklahoma City. We moved to southwest Oklahoma City. And that's when the campaign became public. The next thing I did was to walk the district, this time with a petition. Up at the top, you know, it says, "If you'll sign, Wanda Joe can save the $200 filing fee." Some more of that depression-type frugality, I guess. And so I went to each door this time, and I said, "Now, this doesn't mean that you'll vote for me at all. It just means that you're helping me save that $200. But that time, along the way, I noticed something unique about each house. The purple petunias in the flower beds, the dog's name, the wind chimes, colorful, I love colorful wind chimes, the elephant ears, anything that was that was different, and I jotted it down on the card. My goal was 5,000 signatures, and I got them. And then it was time for me to file for office. So I sent out a little yellow postcard telling the people, well, up at the top, there I sat. It looked like me. I was sitting in a basket in a hot air balloon. And I was holding a banner, and on that banner at the top said, "Lift up District 93. Vote Wanda Jo Peltier." And I wrote, it was a printed note saying I had filed for office. And at the bottom, I wrote a handwritten note. "Loved your purple petunias. Hello to Fido," or whatever was unique there. And you know, a year after that, a woman called me up and she said, "Honey, I got you some of those purple petunias." But those were my favorites, though, really. Purple petunias mixed with pink. And I became quite an authority on flowers going door to door, by the way. And so the third time I walked, though, I shook their hands, looked them straight in the eye, and asked them for their vote and a yard sign. And I got them quite successfully. And that was my first campaign.
Well, I read somewhere that there was a story you need to share about a wheelbarrow full of apricots.
Oh, well, yes. There's some more of the Depression stuff in it. Well, yes, I was campaigning. This man had a wheelbarrow full of apricots, and the flies were just swarming, you know, and he was going to bury them, to get rid of the flies. And so I rescued those apricots and took them home. My husband and I cleaned them real good, and we put them in the freezer and made fried pies for the campaign workers.
That's a good story. Needs to be down, I think.
And one time, a man took me in his backyard to show me something in a pickup, some literature or something he had in a pickup out there. And his Dalmatian, a huge dog, bit me on the leg. And oh my, it was a bad, vicious bite. And so the man took me to the emergency room for a tetanus shot. And I was out hobbling around the next morning. That was when I was getting my 5,000 signatures. So I've had adventures along the way.
And did you have a campaign manager, or were you it?
No, I didn't have a campaign manager.
And how would you budget? How about your budget, like for your first campaign?
Well, you mean where did the money come from?
Or how much you had even?
Well, not very much. As you can see, I didn't need very much. Well, I got the most support from individual members of the Oklahoma Women's Political Caucus. They sent me checks, and I didn't take any PAC money at all during my 10 years in office. I didn't ask the Democratic Party for any support.
For any of the campaigns?
No, for any of the campaigns. But I had a carnival after I was elected. I started having a carnival every year. We have a huge backyard. And my constituents come, and friends and caucus members, everybody comes. And we eat barbecue, drink lemonade, and play games that have political names, fun games, really. For example, play veto, you too have power. Play Porco, bring home the bacon. And one was whatever was current at the time, whatever issue. And one game I remember one year was 10 cups, T-I-N, 10 cups for lame ducks. Help them fly high at taxpayer expense. So.
And about how many people would be in your backyard at one time then?
Oh, a lot, 50 to 100. They would come and go. They would come and go. And I raised about $2,500 each year, and that was ample, you know. Postcards didn't cost much, and I really communicated mostly in postcards. You can't get people to read big, long things. You know, what they can read between the front door and the trash is about all that works.
That's true.
And so, and There was not a lot of trouble with the post office then. We didn't have to have barcodes and all that automated stuff, so it was quite easy to do a mailer, and I never lacked for constituents after that first election, yes, to help stuff envelopes or do whatever needed to be done. But I walked that district every single year and knock on the door and say, because I work for you, I'm reporting to you. And my home phone number is right there, so please call me anytime. And they did, and I answered my phone at home. One morning at 5:30, a woman called me and she said, honey, I'm going to the hospital now. And at the very beginning, when I was first elected, one older man called me every night to pray. And so I listened to him pray every night. And, you know, I thought that was a bit much. But anyway.
You were a comfort to him.
That's what you get when you answer your phone at home, too, I guess.
Well, tell me about your first opponent.
This district, one time, our SWAT team, 13 members of our SWAT team from the Oklahoma Women's Political Caucus went to leaflet the grocery stores in his district because he was very opposed to the Equal Rights Amendment. Our flyers said, did your 59 cents buy $1 worth of groceries today? We were, of course, pointing up the inequity between pay of men and women. And we went on to say, if not, call John Monks, Representative John Monks, and we gave his home phone number. He's the one who voted against cervical cancer screening, against displaced homemakers, against victims of domestic violence, and the list went on. And he was not too happy with us. But then I tried to make it up with him when I was elected to the, elected in my very first session. I was getting ready to go to work. And I heard on the television that this is the 75th anniversary of the Girl Scouts. And so I thought, well, I remembered from the days, the struggle for the Equal Rights Amendment, that the Boy Scout flag could fly over the Capitol, but not the Girl Scout flag. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if I filed a bill to allow the Girl Scout flag to fly over the Capitol, just as a little nicety, nothing, a significant legislation or anything. I thought, I'll stop by Representative Monk's office and see if he'll co-author this bill with me. I just thought that was a really good political move after the past. And so he was delighted. He told me he had filed the Boy Scout flag bill, and he was just so happy to do that. And I knew that it was far enough along in the session that we couldn't get bills out of committee because the deadline had passed. So I thought, well, we'll just do it next year. We'll just announce this and tell the Girl Scouts happy birthday and finish the bill next year. First thing I knew, Representative Monks was standing up on the House floor and said, I ask unanimous consent to pass this Girl Scout bill and send it on to the Senate. And so that it happened just like that within seconds. And a couple of weeks later, I was driving home from the Capitol, and I heard on the radio that the Make My Day amendment had been attached to the Girl Scout bill. And I thought, well, I didn't think too much of it. I thought, well, the media's made a mistake. Something's wrong here. And sure enough, what had happened in the Senate, Senator Ford from Tulsa had filed a Make My Day bill, and Governor Bellman had vetoed it. Well, they got together and compromised, and they came up with language suitable to both of them, and they couldn't find a place to put it. Well, the Girl Scout bill was the only bill alive in the Senate that was in the criminal section of the law. It said, it is against the law for any flag to fly over governmental buildings except the American flag, Oklahoma flag, Red Cross, Boy Scout, Girl Scout. And so they put the Make My Day amendment in the Girl Scout bill. It came back to the Senate, and Representative Jeff Hamilton got up and asked, "Is this germane to the intent of this bill?" Lonnie Abbott from Ada was sitting in the speaker's chair, and he slammed down the gavel, and he said, "It's germane." And so Representative Monks, of course, was handling the bill. And that's how I became the principal author of the Make My Day law in Oklahoma.
I guess it made your day then, didn't it?
Oh, no, I'm not too sure about that.
Tell me a little bit about a typical day. Like, how early would you get started and how late would you stay up?
Well, I was so proud of that job, and I was just so grateful to my constituents for electing me, that I just wanted to do the best job I possibly could. And I got up at 3 o'clock every morning to read the bills. There were stacks. They were just massive sometimes. And I did, and I would get out to the Capitol and follow through. And I was known for catching the woolly boogers in the bills. You know, things slipped in for special interests that were harmful to my constituents. And of course, I'd point that out. I couldn't always take them out, couldn't always get the vote to take them out, but I certainly exposed them.
Well, if you got up at 3, how early would you get to the Capitol? It wouldn't open till 8, would it? Or does it?
Oh, it took a long time to read the bills, hours and hours.
But you did that at home?
At home. Oh, yes. No, I didn't go to the Capitol until.
And you lived close enough where you didn't have to rent an apartment or?
Oh, I lived very close, yes. 5 miles probably from the Capitol.
And so how late, if you got up that early, how late did you stay up then? Were you up till midnight or?
Well, no. My body clock is strange, I suppose, different, I suppose. I got up at 3 o'clock this morning, so it was not an ordeal for me. But I'd go to bed about 8 o'clock, so I got plenty of sleep. So
then you had to attend functions and.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't participate in a lot of the evening functions.
So how many other women were in office when you were there in the House, still with the House?
13, well.
Counting yourself.
Oh, there were 13 women in all. Okay. I think about 7. I think there were 7 of us in the House.
Did you have to share an office?
No. I had a little cubby hole on the 3rd floor. It was not very big, but I filled it with plants, and it was very comfortable.
Did you do lunch out or lunch in? That's been a question I was supposed to ask.
Is that right? You know,
most of them have said
I lunch in. I don't ever remember doing lunch out, to tell you the truth.
There wasn't time.
I'm very practical. Well, that's right.
Well, there was no time too, from what they said.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, what was your biggest challenge as far as a bill goes then? Did anyone come to mind?
Oh, yes, I had a lot of challenges. The first, I didn't go out there with a preconceived notion about what I was going to do, what I was going to, bills I was going to file, issues I would pursue or anything. But the issues were thrust upon me almost immediately after I was elected to office in November, when everybody was busy with holidays, you know. My constituents started getting these attractive pink and blue brochures from Southwestern Bell describing a personalized calling plan. And it sounded so good. They could save money on their phone bills by paying only for the calls they actually made. And they were special because only 5 areas in the state of Oklahoma were being chosen to field test this personalized calling plan. Well, as a researcher, I started digging in. And I found out that this personalized calling plan was a form of local measured service, LMS, we called it. And it was a per call charge for each local call as if it were long distance. By the time placed, the distance called, and the amount of time on the phone. So I held a press conference. I filed a bill that delayed the implementation of local measured service in Oklahoma for 3 years. And we had a full-blown campaign going. We even had our visuals, and we had a slogan. The visual was of a little lady in a rocking chair in her modest little living room. There was a payphone on the wall that said, "Pay before dialing." And she was sitting there thinking, LMS means leaves me silent. And so we won the first round. And immediately then, that was at the beginning of 1997, I learned that President Reagan and the U.S. Congress had reduced corporate income tax by 12%, from 46% to 34%, and that the utilities were holding $19 billion in taxes they had collected through our utility bills, but they would never owe it to the Internal Revenue Service because their taxes had dropped, and they just wouldn't owe it. And I thought, well, that money belongs to my constituents. So I went to the Corporation Commission to see where it was and to get it back to them. I found that the Corporation Commission had already given OG&E $60 million. And so here I go to Attorney General Robert Henry. And I remember just shaking with anger. And he was very nice. He told me he would intervene in the very next case. And he did. The next case was the Southwestern Bell case, as fate would have it. And the Attorney General sent Robert Butkin over there to represent the ratepayers, and he couldn't have chosen a finer person. You know, Robert was our state treasurer after that time. And the case dragged on for almost 10 years. Along the way, we enlisted the help of OOHRP. And along the way, I got documents. You know, when you'll stand up and speak out, people slip things to you. So I got these private documents that showed that 2 of the corporation commissioners had signed a private deal, you know, in the back room, to settle that rate case for hundreds of thousands of dollars, less than what was actually owed. But our dear Attorney General, Drew Edmondson, finally settled that case, I believe in 1995, for $640 million. And each of the ratepayers in Oklahoma got a check at the time of the settlement, got a check for $125, plus a calling card worth about $40, I think. And they got some other benefits through using certain services. I've described the settlement of that case and those additional benefits in this booklet that I published near the end of my term. It's called, "How Many Politicians Does It Take to?" And the question is, the end of the question is on each chapter in the book. And this booklet contains my weekly columns that I wrote when I was in the legislature. And the Oklahoma Press Association posted my columns on its bulletin board, and they were published in newspapers around over the state. But this booklet is full of information about utility issues.
We'll
since I just fell into that issue by accident, really. But I'm leaving this with you. You can have this booklet. And the other significant issue with lasting impact, I learned that the state's cost for inpatient psychiatric care of children in private hospitals had exploded. It had gone from 7 million in 1983 to a projected 98 million 10 years later in 1993. So I did a lot of research on this, and I found that over 500 of those children were age 4 and under. And I found that many of the children were being locked up for acting out, typical adolescent behavior, failing to obey rules, talking back, using 4-letter words, I guess. But I thought the situation was so serious that I did pass a law which strengthened outpatient mental health service and said that inpatient psychiatric care for children would become a last resort instead of a first response. And Helen Cole carried that bill in the Senate, a Republican. It was a true bipartisan effort, and it passed overwhelmingly. I kept up with the cost savings for the first 3 years, and we saved the taxpayers $40 million a year. Plus, a lot of kids didn't get stigmatized along the way.
That's good too.
And the fourth, Freddie Williams, dear Freddie Williams, had filed a bill the year before. This was the second year round for her to try to pass that bill. And it took that head of the household law off of the books. You remember, the husband is the head of the household, and he will choose the place and mode of living, and the wife will sit there and conform. That bill affected young women in Oklahoma in college who married out-of-state men. They automatically were eligible for out-of-state tuition then. And we had a legislator in Oklahoma City who married a legislator in Tulsa, and under that law, the woman in Tulsa would have been ineligible to represent her constituents because her legal residence would be in Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma City. But Freddie filed a bill. I gathered up the votes, and we got that sucker off the books.
Yeah, full circle.
Yes.
Well, what went in your decision making to not run for your 12 years? You served 10 years, right?
Well, yes, but the way I did it, so independently, can't go on forever. I just burned out. I just couldn't bear the thought of knocking on 5,000 doors. That 11th year, I guess, because I was exhausted. I gave everything I had to that job, just everything. And I have the dearest, sweetest husband in the whole world. He supported me 110%, and he took as much pride in my accomplishments as I did. But I decided then, after I knew so much about utility issues, that I would run for the Corporation Commission. And I did. I ran a very effective statewide race, and I was runner-up with 48% of the vote statewide. And it was a big disappointment to me that I hadn't won, but I gave that everything I had to.
Well, and then after that, what have you done? Right, as I understand.
Well, I have had a busy life outside the legislature. I spent 2 years with a private tutor learning Spanish. I've worked in numerous campaigns since I have retired from the legislature. I spent 5 years tutoring adults to read at a community literacy center and spent 6 months in a local school in the reading lab with the small children. And I discovered those for whom English is a second language primarily had such difficulty with our vowel sounds. You know, we have 19 vowel sounds in English, which don't seem so difficult for those of us who have grown up hearing them. But they are such a challenge. And I couldn't find the material that I needed to be an effective volunteer tutor. And so I created it. I wrote a book and I published it. It's called Vowels, Patterns, and Sounds. And it's very clear and simple and understandable. And it doesn't have all those difficult words in it that you have to learn. It's just plain English. And I have a website on the internet for that book now. I'm so proud of it.
We'll take a look at that too. Have you considered running again?
No, my district is open. You know, the seat is open after Al Lindley retires. I believe I could win, but after I won, oh my, I don't know if I could, if I have enough energy to give what it would take. And my husband is 84 years old now, and he's just been such a wonderful man. I just couldn't be all consumed with being in the legislature at this point in his life, and at this point in my life, really.
Well, you have done well for the state, having done 10 years. We're lucky to have had you there.
Thank you very much. The part I enjoyed the most was, you know how it is trying to deal with bureaucrats and red tape, and you just can't get through to the right people, and you just get so frustrated. Well, as I said, I answered my phone at home, and 30,000 people have a lot of problems. And so it was just such a pleasure, such a satisfaction for me to be able to call an agency and get straight through to the head of that agency. But I spent my time solving legitimate problems, you know, and not making deals or anything like that. But that was very satisfying. That's a powerful position, and it's rewarding to use your power to help people with their everyday problems. But I'll tell you one problem I created myself that I never will forget.
Okay.
Excuse me. A person called me and said, you know, our neighbor's septic tank is running over and it's stinking and it's fouling the whole neighborhood. So I called the county health department and reported it. And they said they'd take care of it, and I didn't think much more about it. But a couple of days later, this older man, late in the afternoon, came banging on the door. And I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He said, county health department's going to turn the water off on our block tomorrow. And I didn't connect the two at all. So I told him I'd try to help. I called the county health department, and they said, well, my goodness, we're trying to help you. And so I asked them, please don't turn the water off. I'll see what we can do. And so I went to the city. I couldn't imagine there was a block without a sewer line on it, but there was. So I negotiated with the city and with the homeowners there. The city would build the sewer line if the homeowners would pay $30 a month through their water bills until their part was paid, and everybody was happy to do that. So I solved the problem. I don't think anybody ever found out who created it in the first place.
Any other favorite stories?
Well, no, not that I can think of at the moment.
No more recipes to share?
No, I don't even have a copy of the original. Well, not in its form, you know, not on the little yellow card. I gave them all away.
Well, what advice would you give a young woman today thinking about going into politics?
Well, I would say life is short, and we just go around once. And you know, our first grade readers said, "Run, Dick, run." I'd say, "Run, Jane, run." You'll always regret it if you don't.
Well, and I had asked about pay. You had a comment about pay, men and women's pay.
Well,
how it differed between men and women, and you commented that it was the first job that you had had equal pay for.
Oh, well, yes. I was so grateful for that job because it's the first one I ever had with equal pay for equal work. Well, equal pay anyway.
I thought that was interesting. Did you have a mentor, role model?
Well, no, I really didn't have a role model or a mentor. Well, my dear Aunt Myrtle, I love my dear Aunt Myrtle. She wore an apron, worked in the garden and cooked and all of that. You know, she's my role model for being kind and generous and helpful to people. My political role model was, I suppose, Betty Friedan. You know, she wrote The Feminist Mystique in 1963, and she was one of the founding members of the National Women's Political Caucus. And I didn't read her book until 1969. Have you read it?
No, but I think I should now.
Well, it's mesmerizing. It was about the problem that has no name. And the problem that has no name was the social expectation that women would be quiet and passive and submissive and live their lives through their husbands and their children. And that book had a profound effect on me and my thinking.
As did the women in the caucus, the National Women's Political Caucus.
Well, yes. Well, the women and the men. Those two political consultants who were prominent in the day gave me the best advice I ever had on how to run for office. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I put it into effect.
Well, knocking on doors, did your hand get tired of being shook?
Well, you know, it was the most interesting thing. It was so difficult for me to shake hands, to learn to shake hands. Finally, it just got automatic, you know. Oh, no, I enjoyed it. You know, we just became family in that district almost. As I recall, I got 2/3 of the votes in that first campaign in both the Democratic primary and in the general election. And after that, I got in the 70 percentile. Somewhere in the 70 percentile. And one time, I even got 90% of the vote. That was a strange campaign. My opponent's name was Joy Weed. Joy Weed.
A woman. Yeah.
A woman. And she filed, and I didn't notice it before the Friday that I could have said something, challenged it. And I knew the address was right in the middle of the district. And so when I was knocking on doors, I came to that house and it was empty. And I knew it had been empty for several years since I knocked every year. Mm-hmm. And so I put out a postcard, a little yellow postcard, and there was Sherlock Holmes with his magnifying glass and Dr. Watson. And they asked, has anybody seen Wanda Joe's opponent living inside District 93? But I didn't tell them to call me. But anyway, I put out the postcard. Well, I had taken a picture of the empty rooms in the house, put a camera up to the window, and my husband was there, and the neighbor across the street came and watched me. And I ran the picture of the inside of the house was empty. Well, she went to the police and reported me for breaking her door down. And she even took a receipt where she'd had to have the door fixed. Well, I ended up at the police station, and they gave a copy of the photo to an photo expert, and he said it has been taken through glass. And so that was the end of that. But I got 90% of the vote that time around.
Your little yellow postcards worked good, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Let me check my questions room. I think we've gone through most of this, haven't we? Or am I skipping something? Let's see.
You asked about, what about local constituent issues? What was the most important to my constituents? Could I tell you about
Sure.
that? I soon learned that they were very vocal about their property tax because it kept going up. It's going up now about 5% a year. And they were experiencing that, and it really concerned them. One little woman, you know, struggling to live on Social Security, even told me one time, honey, if my water bill goes up $2, I don't know what I'm going to do. So you can imagine this was a low and moderate income area for the most part. And that was a great concern. And there were 2 attempts during my tenure in the legislature to double the VOTEC property tax. And can you imagine what that would have done? The problem began, years ago, when the senator in South Oklahoma City established the Oklahoma City Community College. It had a different name then. But to get the money for the community college, he called it a vocational technical school in the law. That enabled the community college to collect the property tax in that designated area in South Oklahoma City for the operational costs of the college. Well, years later, Metrotech was established. And Metrotech has a huge district, which encompasses all of the Oklahoma City School District, including that overlap area. It's called the Overlap District, where the community college overlaps with Metrotech. And of course, Metrotech was serving that area without the legal ability to collect any property tax there. And so a couple of times along the way, there were bills filed to allow the community college to collect the VOTEC tax, to allow Metrotech to collect the VOTEC tax. And as unfair as that was to Metrotech, I just could not stand by for a double VOTEC tax on my people to solve a problem that somebody else had created. That is such a complex problem that there have been many lawsuits filed, and some attorneys general opinions too on it. It is just very complex. This session, the legislature has devised another solution for the problem, and the bill has already gone through the House and Senate and will probably become law. What I compromised during my tenure was that, okay, the community college can ask the residents in this overlap area for the incentive VOTEC tax. That's over and above what they were paying for the operational costs. And the community college could share that money with Metrotech. Well, the community college never asked for the money because they knew what the outcome would be in that small overlap. Well, it's not too small, but in the overlap district. So the bill this year, which will become law, I bet, says that either the community college or Metrotech can ask for that incentive levy and divide it with the other. What will happen, of course, is Metrotech will be the one to ask. And a lawsuit in the past was settled and said that Metrotech can ask everybody in the Oklahoma City School District whatever it wants to ask them. So what will happen is everybody in the Oklahoma School District will vote on an incentive levy for people inside this overlap area. And the result will be people outside the overlap area imposing a tax on the people inside the overlap area, which they have voted against. And I don't know how that's going to shake out. But in all fairness, the people outside of the overlap area didn't impose the tax on themselves because they already paid the incentive levy. So it's a complicated situation, and it never should have happened.
You almost need to have a degree in law to understand some of this, don't you?
Well, yes, or you just have to dig and dig and dig and dig.
Read the fine print.
And you know, when you get really interested and serious about a subject, people will help you. They will give you information that they haven't shared before. At least that's what I found along the way.
So you did most of your research or all of your research yourself?
Oh, I did.
So you would go to the libraries or to the
wherever I needed to go, wherever I needed to go. Along the way, I owned a research and technical writing business for I think it was about 11 years. So I know where to go and how to find things.
You got to be efficient at it, didn't
yes, you? Yes.
Okay. Were you a chair or vice chair of any committees while you were in?
Yes, I was vice chair of the Telecommunications Committee. And I spent a lot of my time on what was the committee's name? Anyway, it covered, well, it's too bad I can't.
It'll come to you just.
Okay. But it was on the committee with oversight on utilities and environment, I think, as I recall. But when I chaired that committee, the technology committee, which, you know, should have been for technology, the telephone issues probably, you know, was what you would expect. That committee was bypassed for those bills, so it was interesting, but not as efficient or not as productive, I should say, as it should have been.
Well, several of the other women I've spoken with always commented on how cold the chambers were. Do you remember them being cold, temperature-wise?
No.
They made the comment that they were cooler because the men wore suits. And they had
is that right?
Temperature
adjusted. I never noticed it at all. Well, that's surprising.
And some of them started drinking coffee in order to stay warm.
Well,
you didn't notice that either.
No, but I am so focused,
on why
that I don't pay much attention. And it's amazing that when the Murrow building blew up, I didn't feel it. Although some people did. I was probably so concentrating on something that I didn't notice it.
Well, would you do it all again?
Absolutely.
No regrets.
It has been the privilege of my life to serve the people in that district. And if I die tomorrow, I have had a full and happy life, both as a public servant and as a private citizen.
Well, the state's better off to have had you both ways.
Well, aren't you nice? Thanks.
Anything else we need to cover?
I've
asked all of mine.
I can't think of a thing.
No? Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. I appreciate it, too.
Go ahead.
I'm so honored you folks to that. Yours played done, so go to it.
Well, my most satisfying community service began before I was a member of the legislature. I volunteered for the Salvation Army's activities program conducted in their senior living centers. And as a former English teacher, I taught creative writing classes for 3 years in a row in one of the high-rise residential centers for the elderly. And the residents were to write about their remembrances, we called it. And we published a booklet each year of their works. And they were such interesting stories. And because they had so much historical merit, I took them down to the Oklahoma State Library, and they put them in their Oklahoma collection. And some of the stories they wrote about were about the days during the Depression. One wrote about WPA mattress making, and another wrote about living through the flu epidemic after World War I, and one about Mama's wash day and Mama's button box. And there's one story about a trip by covered wagon from Oklahoma to Texas with details about how they preserved the food to take with them and how they fried sausage, they killed a cow and fried beef, and they layered the meat between layers of lard in 50-pound lard buckets. So I don't know how they kept from having coronary problems, do you?
And they worked too hard and worked it off, I guess.
Anyway, well, that was very satisfying. And there was a judge each year, a contest, but everybody won some kind of prize for some unique situation about their writing. And we had a dinner, an awards dinner, and it was just wonderful.
Well, I'll have to look that up too. I'll have to visit the library in Oklahoma City and see if I can get a copy.
I hope it's
Do they still do that? Do the writing for the senior citizens?
I don't know. I did for 3 years, but
I think that's great. And it is historical value, especially with this being the centennial year.
They may be pulling it forward.
oh, well, wouldn't that be nice? Yes.
Anything else?
Oh.
No. Thank you.